After his cure was an established fact, the news soon spread, passing from tongue to tongue, and other afflicted mortals, hearing this good news in the wilderness, at once turned their eyes and footsteps in the direction of the Star of Gladness. So wrote L.J. Kalklash in his book, The Healing Fountain, in 1881. Once the healing powers of the springs became known, people flocked here from all over the region. It was still a wilderness, so early arrivals traveled by foot, wagon, or horseback. And they arrived to a very rough little boom town, hastily erected by cutting down the forests on the hillside around the healing springs. Nellie Mills noted this in her book, Early Days at Eureka Springs, 1880 to 1892. Some tents were erected near us. On just south of our house had a wooden floor and at least 4 rooms, but soon the tent and its occupants were gone. Behind this big tent was a small one, occupied by a young couple with a baby. That tent was soon gone too. Houses were being built, some of them rude shacks, hastily erected and soon torn or fallen down. Many houses disappeared by magic, just as the tents had done. I never knew what became of them, but they were gone. Nellie and the Mills family lived on Main Street, near the trail that led back to the Magnetic Springs, one of the most popular springs. In the 1890s, the Webb and Brown flour mill stood on the corner nearby. Wheat was shipped into the nearby railway, and the townsfolk were pleased to finally have a local source for flour. Later, Ward Cottage, a boarding house, stood here, where Tree House cottages are located. The restaurant across the street evolved from a small house on the side. Leatherwood Creek flows openly along this part of Main Street, creating the need for little private bridges. But the star of this part of town was Magnetic Springs. Nellie writes, "I was a little girl when the Magnetic Springs was discovered. While this is one of my best loved springs, I wish to state that the water of the spring, in my opinion, was never magnetic, although steel knife blades laid in the water could pick up needles. I believe now that not the water, but the rock had magnetic properties, which the water conducted into the steel knives. The source of the spring has since been tapped at a picturesque spot, and a more bountiful flow of water secured. The new supply is colder, for it no longer flows over flat rock exposed to the sun, but it is still the same water, and very good water it has always been." Magnetic Spring was originally owned by General Powell Clayton, one of those most responsible for transforming Eureka Springs from a boomtown to a fashionable spa resort. However, it was open to the public use as soon as it was discovered. Clayton deeded it to the city of Eureka Springs in 1911. At that time, workmen hand-excavated into the mountainside to open the main stream of water. The picnic pavilion was left in place, and a new wood and stone shelter was built over the spring. The Tourist Social Hour Club, a group concerned with the entertainment of tourists, met regularly here from 1885 to 1935. These were restored in the 1980s, and tourists and locals still enjoy Magnetic Spring. Going back to where Nellie's house was located on Main Street, it should be noted that in the 1890s, her home was overlooked by the very large Magnetic Springs Hotel, actually located on Hillside, the street above. As the Star of Gladness waned, the hotel was used as an orphanage. Eureka Springs was a stop on the route of the orphan trains. By 1916, it was the Ozark Bible and Literacy School. The hotel was later demolished, and 3 lodgings now fill that site.